on Hanukkah. So hold on. Here we go. Okay, so we're learning the Mammar on Hanukkah. It's on the PDF. It's on page 43. Ki'ata neri Hashem v'havaya yagia chashchi. So this is a verse out of Samuel, and it's in the prayer of David HaMelech, that he says, "You are my lamp, O Lord, and the Lord does light my darkness." Okay, the question is, what is it? What does this mean? What are we referring to, and how is this connected to Hanukkah? So the Havin Kefil Beis Pa'amim Havaya. Why does it say two times the name Havaya, which is the name of God? Ke'ataneri Havaya, you're my lamp, O Lord, and O Lord, you light my darkness. Havaya Echad. Havaya, sorry, Havin Kefil Beis Pa'amim Havaya. Aleph Havaya. And the first time it just says Yud Kevavke, and the second time Vabeis Vehavaya, with the vase before, and God. So what's the addition? So the Rebbe says B'tais Vizvav. So the Rebbe says, it says about, in Mishlei, from Shlomo Melech, it says that Ner Hashem, the lamp of God, is Nishmas Adam, is the soul of man. Perush, what does this mean? Shenishmas Adam, the soul of man, Hamulveshes Baguf, as it goes into the body. Hu Bechinas Ner Shoshem Avai is like a lamp of the name of Hashem. Meaning to say, the Shem Havaya. The name of Hashem is made up of the four letters. Merumas Bener. We could find the four components of a Hishan on page 44. We could find the four components of a lamp, or a light out of a lamp, in the four letters of Hashem, name of a God. And he's going to explain. We have what's called Nahoira Akuma Hanechaz Bepsila. This first is the flame, the dark flame that's actually around the wick. Nahira Chivara, the more lighter, brighter flame, which is around the outside. So if anyone looks at a little candle, you see there's a darker inner flame, and then there's a lighter, brighter, what you call Chivara, is really from the word pale, more pale light, L'maylim, above the Nahira Akuma, the darker light. L'chena Neshama Kriya Ner. And so sorry, I skipped. There's four parts in there, which is the shemen, first is the oil, Vapsila, the wick, and Beis Gavane Or, and the two colors. So one is the color of Nahira Kuma, the darker light of the flame, and then there's a Neches Vapsila that grasps onto the actual wick, and Nahira Chivara, and the brighter one, Limainimena. So we have four components: the oil, the wick, and the two lights on that of the flame. So those correspond to the four names, like Ner Havai, Nishmas Adam, that the lamp of God is the soul of man. So there's four components of the soul, like the four components of a lamp. That is why the soul is called like a ner, like a lamp. The soul also has these four components. Shemen has the oil component, Psila, the wick component, Veis Gavani Or, the two types of light from the fire. Hamurumazas Bedad Eisis Avaya, that are hinted in the four letters of God's name. So once you have to understand what this all means. What are the four components of the lamp that are in the soul? And they have to correspond not to the ideas of the oil, wick, and two types of light. And also we are trying to understand about the candles in the Beis Hamikdash, meaning the candles of the menorah, that the Shamar Azal rabbis have asked, does the menorah does the Beis Hamikdash need a lamp? I mean, there was other light, there was other sorts of light. The point of the menorah was as a testimony that to the whole world that Hashem rests amongst the Jewish people. Simply said, the Gemara says there's the miracle component of it, that the light, the Ner Maravi, the western light, which is not clear which light that is the more toward the east or is the middle one, depending on the opinions. But there was the light that lasted, throughout the day, two candles or one candle, depending on the opinion. So, why specifically are the candles testimony to God's resting amongst the Jewish people. There's could be other ways. There's other miracles in the base of Megdash in the temple. The idea is Kihine or Hamer, what is the idea of a light that gives that gives off light? Bishvil Shenechas Or Bepsila. So it says like this. Why is there a light from a lamp or from a candle? Is because the fire, it burns the wick. And technically, it's the fire has to hold on to something, so it's holding on to the wick and it's burning the wick. So had the wick levada, if it was just a wick, if you took a wick without any wax or oil and set the wick on fire, is haisa kav v'kol meir. So it burn out in a few, like a match, burn out in a few seconds, a minute, however long it takes to burn a wick made out of whatever the material is. And when it burn it out, and it would go very fastly. And wouldn't it be a nice light? It would just be like a quick, like a match light. But if you're going to have the wick in oil, a nice, good, clear olive oil, and that allows for the light to grasp properly on the wick, and also affects that the light that comes out of the candle, out of the wick, is going to be a good one and a bright one. Because the oil causes the bright light. So we just said before, there's two lights that come out of the fire that is on the wick. The brightness of it is the oil. And it's the darker part of the flame is coming from the wick. So it's a combination of burning the wick, because eventually the wick does burn out. So it's a combination of burning the wick and the oil, unless the fire goes out before. And it's the oil, the combination of the wick and the oil that allows for it to be a lengthy period of time, and the two qualities of the fire that comes in it. There's the darker fire that's connected to the burning of the wick, and there's the brighter fire that's part of the flame, that's part of the burning of the oil. So this is all an example will be slapshus and neshama of how the soul encloses itself beguf and nefesh bahamis in the body and animalistic soul. Sha'or hanechas v'nislabish b'nefesh bahamis. When we're trying to light up the animal component within us, the animal soul within us, hukim shala ar shenechad b'psila. That's like the fire that's burning the wick. Kihine hanefesh bahamis nilcha min bechinas klipas noga. That the nefesh bahamis, the soul, the way it's in this world, of the animal soul comes from the places of the permissible klipa, the klipa that's not holy but not necessarily evil. And it comes from the 10 characteristics of the world of Noga. We know, again, short, that there's the klipas Noga and Gimel klipas atmeos. There's the things that are tamei, and there's a little Shimmer on page 44, and there's the things that are permissible. They're just the regular things in life. That's the Noga. It's the lighter of the klipos. But it also has characteristics. The Eser sphere has the 10 components, characteristics, the intellectual and the emotional. Seichel amidas, intellectual and emotional. Kizelu umasa asa. God made everything that there's an opposite. So if there's holy components of the mind and the heart and the emotion, so too there's unholy. And in the unholy, there's different levels. There's unholy in a really negative way, and there's an unholy in just an unholy way. Just like there's 10 components to the godly soul, that are 10 expressions of holiness. Also, the animal has its characteristics. And just like in the Nefesh Alikis, there's different people, souls are more like Avram is Chesed. So too, there's people that are Chesed in the negative, in the Klipas Noga, Shem Negarmei. And this is all about expressions for itself, not for a holy purpose. Asher Shal Adam Ba'adam, like it says in Kehelas, where the man of the Nefesh of the Behemoth component rules over the holy man. And like Rivka was told, there will always be a battle between the representation of Yaakov and the representation of Esav within the human, with each individual. The Esav spheres, the Nefesh Alikis, and the godly expressions, combines itself. That's why traditionally you don't find that a person's holy characteristics are totally different than their animal characteristics. I mean, say different is if a person's struggling with chesed, going after taivas, going after the desires, then in holiness, that person has a tendency to chesed. You're not going to find the opposite. We can have a person who's gvura in holiness or vice versa, and it's chesed in holiness, because they're mislabish. They come together. The godly soul encloses itself in the animal soul, but the struggle is in these characteristics. Are you going to turn it into a holy drive, a holy way of doing things, or a non-holy way of doing things? And the 10 components of the godly soul encloses itself in the 10 components of the animal soul. That are counter to it means it has the same characteristics, but it's going towards a non-holy place. Like it explains in Tanya, the different characteristics of the behemoth, what we talked about in Sfir Sa'omer, the characteristics of the behemoth, of the animal. V'hakavana, who and what's the point of this whole experience that the godly soul encloses itself in the animal soul? Is to transform our inner animal, the soul of the animal, and to nullify it, but to burn it up, to elevate it with the light of the soul, that the nefesh Bahamis, the animal soul, should be in line with the desires of the godly soul. Not that it goes away, but now that energy turns into holy energy. First, we have to restrain ourselves, and eventually to transform ourselves. Just like the burning out of the wick, when the flame grasps the wick. And just like in a healthy combination of oil and wick, this flame now turns into fire with the fire. So too the animal soul could transform itself. So that's, now we understand the idea of the comparison between the lamp, which has the 4 components of oil, wick, and the fires, and the human. The human is that lamp. Ner Havaya Nishmas Adam. And what does it mean, the human's the lamp? We have within us the psila, which is the animal soul. We have the shemna, which is the godly soul. And when we put the fire on it, it has both the fire of the animal soul, which is the darker one, and the lighter one on top, which is the godly soul. And that makes a bright candle and makes for something to last. That's the time of a human being's time in this world. Okay. To understand this, how is it? I mean, we're talking about what it is, but how is it that we turn the animal soul, which its tendencies, its characteristics are towards animal things? The Rebbe says, a real zayin a behema, he wants to be a behema, to be elevated as the flame of light and giving off light. It means both parts give off light. The animal soul also gives off. How do we transform the animal to being a source of light? It says, he quotes the verse that we say in Tehillim, in the Ashrei, Arei Mimcha Lekai HaMelech, that Arei Mimcha, from the word Roimim, was elevation, comes from our God, the King. And there's 2 ways, there's 2 ways to translate this verse. One is Aleph, where on the left-hand side is Arei Mimcha Milamata Lamaila. We have to elevate ourselves from below up. Our avod is from upwards. Beis, and the second way to understand is bringing down greatness from above down. Means, do we elevate from ourselves, the avodah going upwards, to make our mundane, our animal, more spiritual, or is the idea to bring godliness down, and that will make the effect? That's a famous debate in 2 types of avodah. Ubirin, and the idea is, like the rulers of the land. What does it mean, Elekai HaMelech, my Lord? What are we referring to? It means Elei Haaretz, Shu Lashon Koyach. It's an expression of strength. And this is King David speaking in the Psalm 145. He's talking on behalf of the whole world. This energy that you have in your own life, from the infinite light of Hashem, how Hashem fills the world, that's the way God is king. God is king over whole creation, and that's why you're alive. His kingship gives life to the whole world. And it first created everything from nothing to something. This all comes from God's kingship. Creation, so what David's saying to the world, that Aramimcha, like that Alekai, The reason why God is our source of life is because He's Melech, because He's King. And God, in the constant level of kingship, is why God wanted to create the world. But no, then it's known about the characteristics of the king. This that a person is a king and a ruler. The difference between a melech and a moshel is a melech is a king and a moshel is a ruler. In avodah, they're not the same thing. Moshel is usually by force. Ruling is by force. As any rak bechinas ha'arvi spashas zlasa, but either way, a ruler is that's not the essence of the person. It's just an expression. There's the personal person. There's the king when he or the ruler when he or she goes into their own private space. They're a person. And this doesn't affect the essence of the person. It's just an expression, and of expressions, the most external expression. Just as the king, the ruler, projects as in a way of ruling. It's like a teacher, the principal. When you meet them outside of school, I'm just chaya. I'm not the person as the principal. Shu chacham. There's other components to the person. The person's wise. That's what we say, that God's kingship is king over all creation. She's havus kol. The fact that there's all the worlds. We're not just talking our specific world, but higher worlds and lower worlds, like vakoyach v'chayis, and there's strength. And that gives them life and creates them. This all comes from God's kingship. That's the way God is a king and a ruler. It's not. We're not. The king. The creation doesn't come from the essence of God. It comes as He manifests, just like a ruler is very distant from the essence of the essence of the person. Right? There's a lot of parts of the person that's nothing to do with the fact that that person also happens to be in a position of rule or power. How you come in order for God to manifest in a way of king, and as a king to create the world. That's why the whole Rosh Hashanah we talk about a melech HaKadosh. We keep talking about God as king because Rosh Hashanah is the day of creation, and He has to go through a tremendous amount of tzimtzum, of concentration. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it says the idea of Nei Adam to show God's gvura power and the hadar of His kingship. And what is the gvura? The gvura is the tzimtzumim, the concentration, the contraction, that God, the infinite, should be defined as king. That He should be king. And this is not the essence, this is only a ray. Like it says, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusay Le'Elvad. This is only the name of God. A name is also very distant from the essence of the person. So this is all the contemplation of a person, recognizing that our whole source of Elekai is Melech. Our facts that we have that we have life only comes from God as a king. There's so much more to God, so much deeper, so much more components to God that are deeper than the concept of being king. And so David Melech says, if this is when we recognize this arimimcha, that elevates us. The recognition of that it means there's two ways to look at it. A person could be, what do you mean? That my whole relationship to God is only king. But if you look at it from a point of truth, recognizing that the levels of God as our creator and our source of life, I mean the fact that we have energy and we're moving and we're talking, we're eating, we're sleeping, we interact. That only comes from the way God is a melech, and we recognize that there's so much more to God that elevates us. We love Hashem, our Lord. It brings out love because we recognize something so much more over here. The love is, I want to love the essence of God, the infinite light, not the way God manifests only as king. With both my hearts, in the plural, that my nefesh Bahamas means this is a conversation you're having not just with your godly soul, but it's a conversation you're having with your animal soul. The animal also is alive. And when the animal realizes that its source of life comes from something so much deeper than God just being our king and our ruler, so it also awakens love in Bishnei Yitzarach, on both sides of the heart. The Yetzer Hara, the animal soul. The evil inclination, I mean, all parts of us wants to be connected to God. And what is the love effect? It's not a love that's just an abstract feeling. We act on that love and we restrain the animal's instincts to do something that's not godly, to say, 1 second, if I love God, so I'm going to use my animal only to serve God. And if I'm being pulled another way, I'm going to exercise iskafia, which is restraining myself. I don't want to give in to anything else but God. Who's with me in heaven? I don't want anything but mili, like anything's with me. B'shamayim in heaven, I just want God Himself. That's how we elevate from a below up, meaning from below, from where we're standing, from His boininess. This comes from His boininess, from contemplation, recognizing that our lekai, our source of life, is the only way God is melech, and therefore our mimcha, we want to go higher than that. I just want to say, if you wanted to be medayik, it's mashma that he says. It seems that when he says that the love that's created by that recognition is we exercise iskafi, restrain, and then he says shlo yechefes v'ratzon, we shouldn't want anything else. Either he's talking about an action, because restrain means you want something else, but you're restraining that one, or that's really referring to ishapcha, to transform. It means we restrain ourselves because we want to change ourselves. It means we're not just happy to restrain ourselves and still being pulled to the animal instincts, but we also want shelo yechefes v'ratzon, and we shouldn't even want anything else. That eventually we should go from restraining ourselves to transforming ourselves. V'gamar mimcha, and the idea of also elevation is amshachas haroimim misma'il lamata. It's not just that we want to go upwards. So what is that? See, this is the idea. This is the foundation of Ratzi v'Shayv. Of Ratzi v'Shayv is yearning towards God, and v'Shayv coming back down. The yearning towards God is created by this idea, by this isbainus. Where do I get my arei mimcha? Where I get elevated is from recognizing that Elikai, my source of life, is melech, is king. But then that's leaving this space. The shoiv is hamshachas haroimim is malamata. No, if there's something greater, let's bring that greatness down here. But the idea is sometimes we say this is it's not the easiest of Mammarim, but the Mammarim of Miketz are not easy Mammarim. The old Mammarim about the idea of light. When it comes to light is a complicated conversation area. So he said this. Sometimes we say, Yachid Chei Eilamim Melech. God is Yachid, He's one. Chei Eilamim, but the source of life is how He's king. And sometimes we say Melech Yachid, that singular king is Chei Eilamim, is the source of life. So what does that mean? Right? Sometimes say Yachid Chei Eilam Melech, sometimes say Melech Yachid. Pierce, so he explains the difference. We find that in davening we say these two differences, right? So it says Yachid Chei Eilamim Melech means what it means. God is one, and Chei Eilamim, but the source of the world is the way God is king. Then, like we said before, essentially God is Yachid. He's beyond creator. The Kaddish Muvdal, totally separate. The Chei Eilamim, but if you see the world and there's life to the world, how does that happen? Who are they? Commenting to him, like we said before, only through many contractions. That he manifests as king, to the world. And that's how we affect that God should come down when we recognize that you're king. So we say we want to bring down bring down more. And what does it mean? Melech Yachid Chei Eilamim. They say the opposite. Hainu. Because he is the source of the world, of life of the world, therefore he has to concentrate himself as a king. Means, do we say that the God is that the source of the world, the source of the life, the source of creation is Melech, or because he is the source of life, he becomes a king? I'm not going to go. It's a play on words, but let's see how he explains it. The b'chinas Melech zehu hagam shehu b'chinas. Even though God's kingship is the last of the infinite light, it means there's, like we said before, the king is the most distant. The fact that God is king is the most distant from his essential characteristics. It's still Yachid. It's still a God's above the world. But still, even the way God is king means the idea is like this: are we looking at the way God is lowering himself to be king? Or even as creator, that's Yachid, it's separate. It means the fact where do we emphasize the God's oneness? Is it the way he's beyond creator? Or even as he is creator, his oneness? So here he's saying is that even though kingship is the source of life, but still comes from the infinite of Hashem. And therefore it's Yachid, it's still separate. Yachid means it's singular, not connected, it's not part of a story. He's wholly separate from the creation, even though he's the source of creation. And if that's the way it is, Nimshach bechinas malchusei lebechinas yachid che'elamim liyes islabish melch yachid kadosh muvdol bechinas olamim. And the idea is that God's oneness is to be brought down into the world. Behind the ba'olam hazagashim, in this physical space, dafka kinotz tchilasim v'seifin daka. And where does the oneness of God want to come down? Is only the bottom line. What inspire means, the idea basically is what kind of expression will inspire God to be a creator, to bring down godliness to this world. So seemingly one would say, what do you mean? An angel can do that. An angel is so holy. The world of Atzilus will do that. The world of where everything's one of godliness. Our world is a dark world. It's hard to find 30 seconds of emes, of truth. This would be the most distant place on God's radar. And that's the whole point. That Yachid Chei Lamim is Melech. You want to know where the Yachid is, where the oneness of God is, when he's king. The further down he could go, holy space, anything further, anything higher than our world is just a manifestation that doesn't impress God. Impresses God is the bottom, Saif Maisa, the end. Not Saif, not Tchilasim Saif. And where's the beginning? Why does God want to be king? Is because there's this world. Nothing else inspires God. And in generations, it's our generation. That's why we say that the words of Torah that I command you today, you want to know what connects the love that God has for us and us for God, is Hayoim today, not the Garden of Eden that's L'machar tomorrow. Hayoim la'asayisa. Today is when we make godliness. Is that today we do the mitzvahs. That brings down the essence of God. You want to know when you want Aramimcha, you want to bring down essence of God. It's Hayom today in this world when we do a mitzvah. Mitzavcha, what does the word Hayom Asharnechi Mitzavcha Hayom? What does Mitzavcha mean? The word Tzivui means hiskashrus, connection. You want to connect with the essence of God, it's Hayom to do a mitzvah today. Bechinas Hayom la'asayisem dafka. Shubayil mazen, this world. Olam Maisa, the world of action. Not in the holy world, there's the more spiritual world. God, that doesn't inspire God. That there's a soul sitting in heaven and taking in the light. That doesn't impress God. And there's many examples given about this. Like the famous examples given is a parrot. You want to bring the king something, to bring a king someone that could speak nicely. The king here has a lot of people that talk nicely. Bring him something unique. Bring him a parrot that's talking. So even though the parrots may not make too much sense. But if the parrot can say one sentence, that'll get the king excited. Why? Because it's not regular. For us to do something in this world is not regular. And he says, in this world, the world of action, not in the higher worlds. In the higher world, it's all just a chain. And the further the chain goes, the less dark, the less light it is. From cause and effect. And no matter what world you're in, it's very distant from the essence of God. So he says, and the further we are in this world, the further we are from the Orient Sof, from the infinite light, but in our world, the end of the world, not in the spiritual world. There you see the essence of God. Not the way God is just getting further and further from his essence in the higher worlds. That's where the flame grasps onto the wick. Before the flame grasps onto the wick, it's not a light. You don't create. When's a lamp become a lamp? When you take the source of fire and you light the lantern. He's achzusay, when it grasps b'davar gashmi only onto something physical. Nisav gilior, then there's light. The fire needs something material to grasp onto to create a fire. If it doesn't do that, hey Rebecca, if it doesn't do that, then it doesn't have anything to hold on to. It won't last. You want it to last, the flame to last, it has to hold on to something, a wick, and the wick has to have within oil. How do we bring the light down? How can we bring the light down to this world? It's not just going to come down to this world because the world exists. We have to do something about it. We have to bring the light down. Ruach HaYisrael means the fact that the world exists. That's just existence of the world. How do we bring that Al Kai Melech, the source of God, the Yachid, the oneness of God that's beyond the way God is just the creator? We have to do something. He wants to be in this world, but he wants to be in this world if we do something to create, to make him to be in this world. That's why the Avodas Adam has to come through service of man. And when we give our spirit, it's ruach v'amshech ruach. It brings another spirit. It brings the spirit of God. If you give your heart to God, ruach v'nishmasa, your soul and your spirit, they love Yisaf, then it goes towards God, and God is response to that. That's why they lit the candles in the menorah. In the Beis Hamikdash, that the light of godliness should be grasped and has to grasp onto something. And what is it to grasp onto? The material of this world. The mitzvahs that we do here in this world. And that brings the light down, and the light remains here. And this is what it says in Tehillim further in Ashrei. God is close to those who call him, and you call him with truth. That God's emes is in the world. And you want to know how do you reveal the emes, the oneness, the truth of God, is when you show that there is no difference between that the lowest place is a place of godliness. When we're a place that's void of godliness, that's not emes. Emes is the truth of God is that God is true in the highest of spaces and the lowest of spaces. Just like it's dark, there's light. And the only reason why there's a Seder Shtalshlus, the only reason why there's contraction, that there's not absolute revelation, that we shouldn't cease to exist. But God wants us to exist in our entity. We should be Metzias and reveal God in that space. V'nikram kid museinu, demus kvoid Hashem. Ava b'tzalmeinu, it says in our form and our image. So b'tzalmeinu b'tzemelikim hainu amitus yichudis barach b'yem tachleim b'shava. So the way it is in this world, when there's a concealment of God, of godliness, that's kid museinu. That's where doima, we're similar to God. But b'tzalmeinu in God's image, like a tzelem, that's the spiritual. The spiritual is the spirit in everything, and there is absolute godliness. And the struggle is then the demus in the comparison, the way things are in the material, from a material point of view, to find godliness there. That's the challenge, and that's what God wants. That's the voda. And how do we reveal the truth of God in this world? The God's greatness, His chesed, His goodness, Gover Aleinu. He came down in a way of gvura and force, in a way of strength. Machmas tegboiris chesed. God has so much chesed, so much va'or, and so much light. Above the chain. God overwhelms us with kindness, overwhelms us with love, and that's how He empowers us to bring down the emes of Hashem, the truth of God into the world. And where does that strength come from? What inspires that strength is the animal soul. This is the whole point, that you said before that there's the two flames in the lamp, right? You have the oil, which is the nefesh alikis, the godly soul. You have the wick, which is the nefesh bahamis, the animal soul, and then there's the fire, the passion for God. So we seemingly, what catches the eye is the brightness, the outer brightness of the flame, and the inner one is more of a darker bluish orange color, right? So, but that's really what's it about. That's what Hashem wants. The other one is more of a protected light. That's an encompassing light. So he says, where does it really come from? It's skafia, when a person is hapches skafia, when you transform the animal. Because the animal soul, although in this world, the animal soul is much lower than the godly soul. It's an animal. Its source is so much from such a high place. Like we learned about Esav, that Esav comes from the world of chaos, the world of Torah, the world of the animals. Like it says about Esav, the world of Esav is before the kings of Israel, the world of Tohu. And over there, the animal is very strong. That's why the animal in this world is stronger than the human. But it needs to be controlled by the human, otherwise it's a chaotic strength. When you transform the animal, then you have a holy strength. Just like food. The person lives from the food, and we've discussed this many times. How could the food sustain a human? Is because the source of the food comes higher than the human. Therefore, when you transform the animal to no longer be have its instincts and desires towards animal things. Then you have Isgabris HaToiv Al Hara, when the good overrides the bad within the person. That inspires the great, powerful chesed. Just like you're not going to have a light response to such a powerful avoda. If you're turning the animal, which is so strong, into an animal for God, even if it's just by restraining the animal, not to give in to its animal instincts, that brings down a gever, gvura, a strength of chesed from Hashem. Gili emes Hashem la'olam, that brings the oneness, the truth of God down to the world. Amitas Hashem mamish, that's the truth of Hashem. Let's skip the parentheses. Achine, k'moy b'mishal or hanal, just like we just said about the flame. And we just said before, you can't just burn the animal soul. If you're just going to burn the wick without the oil, whatever, it burns out. It's not going to be a good flame. All the things we said before. A person has to bring shemen, light in their avoda. By bringing the godly soul into the body. This is the high, this is not just any oil. This is the oil of the holy anointing. What is this referring to? Shemen is Torah. These are the foundations of the talks of Hanukkah from the Rebbe, that all the oil became impure. There's different components of Torah. We're talking about the Shemen part of Torah. What is the Shemen part of Torah? That's Hashem's wisdom in everything. And Torah is taken from Chachma, God's wisdom. Shemen is the inner life of everything. Everything has oil. The Rebbe says, Alter Rebbe says, there's even an oil component in stones. Obviously not the same oil that you have in an olive. Everything is created in Chachma, and Chachma is Shemen. So everything has to have Shemen, everything has to have oil. Every existence has an inner life. That's the Shemen component. And where does this Shemen come from? When it's brought down in the way of holiness. God's great wisdom. He comes into the most mundane things, the laws of how you plant things, the laws of the Mishnah of Zroim, the Mishnah of Moyed. These are all Mishnahs that are dealing with material questions. And this Shemen causes that there should be a good light in the world. A good light in the world of creation. And through the Torah we reveal the infinite light of Hashem, that you actually see God, not just these imagining feelings like we spoke about in the previous Mammar last week about the chalaim, the dimyan, the imagination. When you have just an imaginary relationship with Hashem, it's just passive. You have a few good moments and then you move on. You want to be solid with your relationship with Hashem. If you don't reveal the oil in something, it's not kveya, it's not established love and relationship with Hashem. We want to have a true revealed love for Hashem. Kavua, it should be steady, v'takua, and wedged in, b'chizuk, strong, kiyosech shleitomit, like a good nail. A nail that's put into the ground solid. He's constantly standing before Hashem. And how do we reveal this within the person? Hashem upon him, to constantly have the awareness of God, fear of God on you. To have absolute self-nullification to God, which is called the Yira Ilah, the higher level of fear. And that's again, so it's going back. So we keep on going back to the name of Hashem. I'm going to try to get to the end, to the answer. We're still in the first part of the pasuk. The pasuk started that the first part of the pasuk starts Ki atineri Hashem, right? It says Ki atineri Hashem, and then we say V'havaya Yegiach Hashchi. So first is Ki atineri Hashem, you're my light, and that's the first. That's all of the first part of the components of God's name. That the neshama is made up of the four levels of oil wick and oil wick and oil wick and the two fires. And that's all the first letter, the first four letters of Hashem's name. And in Avodah that he says that means, what does that mean? To reveal the four levels of love, fear, of fear, love, and fear. So the first love, the higher level of fear is called Yireh Ilah, the higher level of fear of God, which means you're totally batal, nullified to God. And that is hinted in the first letter of God's name, the Yud. The four letters of God's name, the Yud represents fear. The Yud, the Hey represents the first Hey represents love. The second Vav represents a lower level of love, and the bottom Hey of Hashem's name is the lower level of fear, the fear of punishment, the fear of disconnect. Nimsa Shais Yud, who remezes the Chachma. So therefore, Yud, which is Chachma, Bechinas Techila, that's fear. So you want to know, what does it mean to have Chachma, and everything you do is to have the fear, not in a way of punishment or even that you're distant, the fear of awe, the fear of absolute self-nullification. If you don't have Chachma, you don't have fear of God. Therefore it says about the giving of the Torah, just like we stood when we got the Torah the first time, with awe and fear of God. Afkan, every time you study Torah, you have to have that awareness. Because the infinite light encloses itself in the laws of Torah. Therefore, it has to affect the nullification, and that's why the Greeks made impure the oil. They didn't like the bittul, the component of that it had on the Jew. The chachma, the fact that a person, kochma, the power to be mivatal yourself, to nullify yourself for God. That you want to study Torah as an intellectual study, that's fine. But the bittul of Torah, the shemen of Torah, is what they had an issue with. Even if we're dealing with mundane laws, that's talked about in Torah, this is the word of God, and you have to find the oil, the connection, the fear you have for God when you study the Torah. When a person studies Torah, this is the word of God. It's the breath of God speaking within you. My words that I've placed in your mouth. You're speaking the words of Torah. You're connecting to the yira, to the fear. You're bringing down, you're revealing the fear, the bittul. You're revealing how the law is not just a law. Don't do this, do this. This is the way godliness comes into the world. That's why it says. That's why he quoted before. How do you bring godliness from above the world in the world? Is call a kari be'emes. You have to call God with emes. Emes is Torah. And once a person has that fear, when we say v'dibartebam, you recognize that connection, that yira you have for God. So then you stand before God in the Shemona Esrei, quietly. As a person who's standing nullified, that's why it's silent. That's why we bow in the Shemona Esrei. Bringing the bittul, the self-nullification. When they stood, that when there's a passion, excitement, there's eish, there's fire, so then the wings of the angels are flapping. But when there's bittul, when you're standing Shemona Esrei, when they stand up, not sitting, when they're standing, Shema Yisrael, we say when we're sitting, Allah, you're supposed to sit when you say Shema. But when you stand up to the Amidah, Tirafena Kanfeim, their wings get weak, like Rifu, it gets just, the wings go down of the angels. They're not expressive anymore. They're just standing self-nullified before Hashem. Quiet. And what's the final yira? There's fear of God, fear of the total bittul. And then there's the two levels of love. What's the last? Hey. Here it tells a lower level of love. What's that? That's the Pasha Shlei Limrei de Melech Machem Lachem Kadosh Baruch Hu. That just sometimes you need the fear of just don't do what's wrong. Don't be rebellious against God. And this is sometimes it's just the wick has a flame on it. They just to transform it from being a behema, from being something that rebels against God to not rebelling. And he says, "Ubeis gavani orheim beis pa'amim rechimosh b'shem avaya ki v'hafta b'gemati beis M'amar." And like we said, so there's the fear. There's the fear that is the shemen. That's the bittul. There's the fear that's the psila. That's the behema. That the behema shouldn't rebel against God. What are the two flames? The darker flame and the lighter flame around the wick. So that he says that's the two levels of love. There's the coarse love. There's the love of the behemoth. There's the love that gets a little more refined, the brighter love. And that's why Or, the number value of Or, which is 207, is 2 times the number value of Yahavta. Love has 2 types of love in it. There's the first love, which is Yud K, the second Hey, the first Hey of Hashem's name. The second letter of God's name. It's the tremendous love you have for God. M'amar, that's a gift from above. It's a kind of love of pleasure for God. It's a gift. You can't create that love. That's the bright light, like I said, around. Why is it around? It's makib, it's surrounding. The love that you could create is that dark light, because it's a love created about your life. But if you first you have on top of that you have a brighter light that's a gift from God. And the second light, which is the love that you have, it's connecting the third letter of God's name, which is the Vav. That's love that's created through the mind. And through your contemplation, the greatness of God. That's why there's a mitzvah. You have to love. How could you command me to love? Either I love, I don't love. What I mean, I command me to love. So that the answer given is do the things that it takes to love God. That's the darker light. It's more connected to the wick. And it grasps it. And that is the first part of the pasuk that the Rebbe quotes in the Mammar, Ki atah neri havaya. You are my light. This is who I am. I'm a wick. I'm oil. I'm bittul. I'm a behemoth. I have a whole part of many components. I have the love that's the darker fire. That's the love that's battling with my essence, who I am. There's the love that's surrounding the brighter light. You're my light, God. The 4 letters of God's name. That is the oil, the wick, Beis Gavani Or, the 2 types of fire. Those are the 2, like the 4 letters of God's name. We just said Nasaneri, that becomes me. I become that flame. The soul, the light of God is the soul of man. That's through avodah, through the whole experience of who I am. And just a little bit into the next part of the pasuk. What does it mean? That God lights up my darkness. And with the vav before b'taisus vav. That's all the creating your own lamp. Then there's a higher level of godliness that's beyond that. We say in the 13 attributes of mercy, Hashem, 2 times God, to be compassionate. Racham, he's compassionate. There's a separation in the notes between the 2 names of God. There's 2 types of levels of God's name. And he goes in to explain the second level. We're not going to have time to finish the Mammar, so I just wanted to be able to say. I'm going to skip to the end of the Mammar, the last part. So he explains in the second part, is the higher level of Hashem's name, which is a gift mamish from God, as a chesed, a kindness that's given to us. He goes into different levels of the souls of different generations. But let's just see how he finishes off to bring it to Chanukah. In the left-hand side, this is the idea of the miracle of Chanukah. The Greeks went into the Heichel, to the sanctuary. What is the word Heichel? Heichel b'chinas machshava, Hey Yud Kol. It's the first 2 letters of God's name, and Kol is just 50. Bigmati Shari Nun Shari Bina, the 50 gates of understanding. Vayevonim Hanal, these Greeks, Hey Mechinas Chachma de Klipa. They wanted to argue on the Chachma, the wisdom of God, and they're the wisdom of unholiness. Chachma Chitzainis, external wisdom. Philosophia. Philosophy. The philosophers were contradicted. They didn't agree with any concept of prophecy. They went out there and they said, "Oh, Shemen. Shemen is the oils that are Chachma, the wisdom of God. You don't have to be connected to the wisdom of God. You want holiness. They wanted us to forget our Torah, the connection of the Shemen of Torah. And the miracle was, there was one little bit of oil that was protected with the seal of the high priest. Dikna, the Kahana Rabba, Chesed Elyon. This was, like we said, the Kohen Gadol represents tremendous Chesed. Balois Aaron is an heir, so when Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, lights the fires. We needed that little bit of the Kohen Gadol to light our fire. Aaron Sheshvina de Martinusa. Aaron is the representation of the maid of the kala of the bride, which is the Jewish people. She that God, the little bit of love that was protected, that comes from above, that they couldn't touch. From there, they had 8 days of light. Which is the thought, and the emotions, lit it up with our thoughts and emotions to be lit up with holiness. That should be lit up with the gift of God, the love that comes from above. Sometimes there's no avodah we could do for that. The Jewish people didn't have an avodah, didn't have a service. There was no service from below that inspired that. But there was one little shemen that was enough to light up our thought and our midas, and from there we could start building. And that's why Havaya, we said, is we create our own lamp. Sometimes we need V'Havaya, we need from God. That little light, if everything else isn't working, everything else has been penetrated, everything else has become impure. Hashem comes in with a little light of the love of God, that even if we've been corrupted, and our thinking has been corrupted, our emotions have become corrupted. There's the Vahavaya, the little bit of oil, the Pach of the Shem Kohen Gadol, of the high priest that lights up our spirit, lights up our menorah. Good Yom Tov, everyone. Everyone have a good, Ezra Hashem, a happy Chanukah. And we have the light of the menorah, the light of Mashiach. Laila Tov, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Are we learning on Wednesday night?
Wednesday night we are. A Tuesday night Gemara share, I don't think we are, unless I can figure out another time because of Nittel.